Okay. Hey, welcome everyone to the first keynote session of this Global Leadership Lab immersion on the theme of leading movements. We have folks from all over the world joining us on Helping, YouTube, and of course Facebook. My name is Mia, and I'm an Atlas course scholar from Madagascar. I'm very excited to be today's session moderator and have the pleasure to speak with our amazing guest. Before we kick off, here's a quick reminder that our Atlas course team will be monitoring chat on each of the platforms. So use it to ask questions to our keynote speaker. To make things easier, start your comment with a letter Q. Say where you're from and ask your question. We'll get back to it at the end of today's event. Okay, so to warm us all up a little bit, here is an icebreaker question for everyone. If you had to spend the rest of your life away from your home country, what three items would you want to have with you? While you let us know in the comment section below, let me introduce you today's guest. Ambassador Eric Andriamihaja Robson is the Executive Director of the Arab Youth Venture Foundation, AYVF. He co-founded in March 2020 the Global Citizens Innovative Solutions as the Chase Challenge. Former Ambassador of the Republic of Madagascar to the United States and former Chief Executive Officer of the Economic Development Board of Madagascar. Mr. Andriamihaja Robson has been involved in international debt investment, international trade, investments, and competitiveness. Welcome back, Ambassador Robson. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's kind of cutting off sometimes, but yeah, I hear most of it. So yeah, thank you very much for having me
Okay.
here today.
Yeah. Okay, so as I just mentioned before, we had the first icebreaker question that maybe you would like to answer. It was if you have to spend the rest of your life away from your home country, what three items would you want to have with you?
That's a good question. I will have some clothes. Uh, I have a telephone, and I have my glasses.
Okay, but if there is no network, I think that your phone you cannot use your phone at this time. But it's kind of
Yeah,
funny.
hopefully that there will be.
All right. I also have another question. It's also an icebreaker question, especially for you that I had. Um, I also want to tell you again that it is a great honor and a wonderful opportunity to have you among us today. As an ambassador of the Republic of Madagascar in the United States, you certainly have seen many differences between the two countries. What do you miss the most about living in Madagascar?
First, I think first of all, it's my family. Uh, because besides having my wife and my children with me here, all of my family is still back in Madagascar. So that's the first thing I miss the most. The second thing is the food, the Malagasy food, uh, which I cannot find here. Unlike some other countries where they have restaurants here in DC, they have Ethiopian restaurants, or of course Chinese restaurants. There is no Malagasy restaurant here, so I do not have the chance to eat much Malagasy food. So that's something I miss also from living in Madagascar.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. I think that you also miss Kaftuti Sinaksu, right?
Exactly, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the very first question, which is more about your professional journey.
Mhm.
Um, did you always want to work in the field of economic development and later on diplomacy?
When I left Madagascar when I was 20, 23, 24 to study here in the US, I I knew that I was going back someday. I did not know when I would go back, but it was clear in my mind that I would go back to Madagascar. And then when I saw the difference, the, the gap in the level of development between the US and Madagascar, this is where I started to think that I would participate actively in the economic development of Madagascar. So when I went home back in 2007, with a brief talk with the then president of the Republic, I joined the Madagascar Action Plan. I was involved in the commitment number 8, which is economic development of the country. And that led me to the Economic Development Board of Madagascar, and where I became CEO maybe 5, 7 years later. Nothing really predicted me to be a diplomat, beside the fact that I studied international business. And recently, in the past, I will say past 5 years or so, most of the developing countries shifted their diplomacy, the traditional diplomacy, to the economic diplomacy, uh, going towards really a more economical objective of the diplomacy. And Madagascar was among them. So when the then president in 2017 told me that he was considering to send me as an ambassador to the US, thinking mostly about that economic diplomacy, uh, then I say it's going to be another way for me to serve my country. So I became a diplomat.
That sounds really interesting. And are there any skills that you never thought you would have right now?
um, I think at a certain point of time, you realize that you actually have to learn every day. If you have some skills, then you realize someday that it's not enough, or maybe to not even master that skill at 100%. Uh, and so I wouldn't say was there skills that were missing, or I think I just had to learn everything. Still, every day, I still have to learn new skills or to perform more skills, and it's just like an everlasting movement.
All right. So let's get to the next question. You have experience knowledge in various sectors of the economy, agribusiness, tourism, energy, information and communications technology, textiles, and mining. How has working in these fields prepared you for the role of Chief Executive Officer of the Economic Development Board of Madagascar?
Um, the EDBM, the Economic Development Board of Madagascar, is an investment promotion agency. It's an agency in charge of promoting Madagascar as a destination for investment. We used to promote Madagascar as a destination for tourism. But this time it's promoting Madagascar as a destination for investment. And it's promoting, so that is, it's selling. When you sell something, you have to know what you're selling. You have to master what you're selling actually. So what years of when I went back to Madagascar, uh, I started to go into every key economic sector uh, uh, of Madagascar. So talking to a ministry of agriculture, and then talking to the operators in the agribusiness, and then you hear different points of view, and you leave it. When you're in the middle, then you know what it is. What is the problem from the operators, and what are the public sector, but what the public sector is thinking about that problem. You talk to the people in the tourism, and then this is what it is, and then you see from the Ministry of Tourism that is, however, this way. That is, for several years it's been like that. So when I became CEO of the Debian, it's just like the culmination, the combination of all these years, like really talking about textile, for example, in Madagascar, and then I know that, okay, textile, this is what we have in there. This is the problem. These are the potential investors in that specific sector. And so it was really, had I not been involved in these different sectors, I don't think I would have been able to do what I could have, or what I have done with the DBM.
Um, um, I heard that you have advised one of the former Malagasy presidents on economic development and facilitated investments in businesses in your country. Based on your experience, what are the key areas of investment do you see as crucial for the future development of Madagascar?
Um, I think in the case of Madagascar, and I think there are similar countries to Madagascar, it's stability for investment, stability, continuity. That means if I am someone who is going to invest hundreds of millions in your country, can you guarantee that the rules of the game will remain the same for the next 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 20 years? Because that's a lot of money that I'm going to put in. If I cannot be sure that it's going to be the same for the long term, I'm not going to be confident in investing in the country. If I see that it's not stable, it's changing like every 1-2 years, it's not the same, then I will not invest in the country. So that's one thing for Madagascar, is really having stability, continuity, and making the rules clear for everyone and the same for everyone. Uh, and we're still missing that in Madagascar. It's not when the government changes, then things have tendency to change also, right? And it's not really reassuring for the investors. So that's very crucial for us. People may talk about corruption, tax, and these other parameters of the investment, but most importantly for us is stability and continuity.
And what lessons could Madagascar draw from the USA to advance in its development?
Ah, the gap is humongous. The gap is big between the US and Madagascar. I can easily say that we are 100 years back compared to the US, really, especially in some areas. Maybe when we talk technology, Madagascar is kind of, yeah, we're there, 5G is on, and then Madagascar has 5G, and we have the latest computers. But when you look at something that's like the infrastructure, uh, 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 developed countries have had their subways for 100 years. We don't have one. Uh, the way we do our agriculture in Madagascar, it's still very traditional, and I can still say it's really 100 years behind the developed countries. But what can we learn from the US? I think it's the rule of law. Apply. I always say that we Madagascar, in terms of, I don't know if there are other countries that are like Madagascar, but I think there are some, based on my some comparison that I made with several between several African countries. We have a very up to date law, but in terms of applying the law, we are just way behind. I've even seen some consultants from the World Bank, when we're talking about the business climate in Madagascar, they say, in terms of in the law, in the judiciary, Madagascar is like, yeah, you're could be like 10 years ahead of some African countries. But in terms of applying these laws, you are like 10 years behind some African countries. So that's what we need to learn from the US. I mean, from my understanding and from my experience, is that we have to have a better rule of law, applying the law as it is, and not applying it because it arranges someone or something or something like that.
I totally agree because I'm also a law student, and this is something that is really accurate. We know that this is a big problem, a big issue here. So you're right. Um, I would also like to ask you that as an ambassador, part of your role was to maintain a good relationship between the two countries and find ways to facilitate exchanges in all possible areas. What were the priorities that you set yourself in this position, and how do you approach communicating and building partnerships for Madagascar?
My main objective was to increase the visibility of Madagascar. When you are a poor and small country, and you're faced a big, rich, and powerful country, the tendency is that you're small, and then the tendency is like you always need to ask for help and assistance. Like what people think is, okay, you're an ambassador, then go to the US and ask for help, ask them to help us. I didn't really take it that way. My idea was, what can a poor country offer in the relationship? Even if you are small and poor, you cannot always stay in that corner of a poor and small country. You need to show what the country can offer. Well, in terms of economy, for example, every single government in the world likes job creation, want job creation in their country. So when I was talking to the U.S. administration or promoting investment in Madagascar, I always say, if American companies invest in Madagascar, they have also the opportunity to create a job in the U.S. I'm giving you an example. There is a textile company in Madagascar. It's a Mauritian company. They have one factory in Tana, and they have one factory in Mauritius. The exact same factory. And on the basis of 1,000 employees, so 1,000 employees in Madagascar and 1,000 in the factory in Mauritius, there is a difference of $2.5 million of operational cost. So they save $2.5 million with the factory in Madagascar. So when I talk to the US operators, US investors, I say, see, if you have this factory in Mauritius or in Uganda or wherever in the Indian Ocean, you're going to save $2.5 million a year in terms of salary, on the salary part of it. That $2.5 million you could use in the US for the logistics and sales, and that means you're going to have to hire people in the US because you made some savings, big savings, just by operating in Madagascar instead of having it in Mauritius or even having it in the US. So that's where you stand, like, what can I offer? I am small, I am poor, my country is poor, but we can still offer something. That's in the economic part of the diplomacy. In the other part of the diplomacy, you have to be able to show also what role can you play in the peace in the world, peace in the region. Fortunately, we live Madagascar and the Indian Ocean, we're quite peaceful, so it's not really. But you have also to be able to say we can offer this and that in terms of research and science. We part of the we used to. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but we've talked about reopening NASA in Madagascar. We used to have a site of NASA in Mirtiatuski in Madagascar. It was closed years ago, back in 1975 or 76. They closed it because of the relationship, actually, talking about diplomacy, because the relationship between the US and the Malagasy government at the time, they had to close the NASA site in Madagascar. So this is talking about science, talking about going to the space, and like Jeff Bezos just did yesterday. So I was talking to the US, like, why are not considering reopening it? Because if you had it there before, that means there's something. It's interesting to have it in there because of the position in the Indian Ocean and things like that. So that's also part of it. What can you offer as a small country? You cannot always, give me this, we are poor, help us. And you have also to be able to offer something in the relationship.
That's really impressive. Something new that you just teach me. For the next question is about your experience work both in and out of Madagascar. What advice might you have for Alaska's leaders when it comes to adjusting to different cultural standards of communication or different leadership styles?
That's quite interesting because I think I've had several culture shocks. When I left Madagascar and arrived in the US, it was a big culture shock for me. Then I lived here for 5 years and then moved to France for another 5 years before I went back to Madagascar. So that's 10 years of living with the mentality of the Western world, the way they work, all of this. And then you go back to Madagascar, where you know that in Madagascar we're kind of lay back, mura, slow down. So it was kind of another culture shock to me going back to Madagascar after 10 years and to get adapted to it again. Then I lived in Madagascar for 11 years before I was appointed ambassador and going back to the US again, where you have started to pick up some of the way Malagasy work and then go back to the speed and what I can say about this is do not try to change people. If you lived abroad for years and then you go back and you think that you are going to change people to act the way you do, then it's a total failure. It's not going to work. You cannot just, especially when talking about Madagascar, where time is, punctuality is not really the strength of the Malagasy people. In the Western world, when it's 8 o'clock, then it's 8 o'clock. In Madagascar, when it's 8 o'clock, then that means 8:30 or 8:45. That's fine. How are you going to change people when you're used to take a subway that passes at 8:05 or 8:06, and if you miss it, then you miss it. To some people who have never taken the subway in Madagascar, they don't understand the meaning of these 30 seconds that are crucial for you to be late at work or not. If you miss the 8:05 bus, then you'll be late, which is not really in the state of mind of the Malagasy. So if you try to change them like that, then you will become crazy. I think it's not. I say that because I think I tried, and then at a certain point I say, no, it's not going to work. There must be something else. So the idea is, that was for me, that what I did is just to get the most of these people the way they are. I'm not going to try to change you, but I'm going to get the most of you, the most of you, the most of you. That means your strength, I'm going to use them. Your weaknesses, I am also going to use them. If your weakness is to be very, I don't know, just throw an example like this, if you're very talkative, then I'm going to use that for some meetings where we need our organization to be kind of talkative, to be kind of showing off or whatever. But every strength, every weakness that you have, I'm going to use them. I'm going to take the best of them, the most of them. But I am not going to try to change you, especially if you're like 45 years old, or how you've been living like that for 45 years. How am I going to change you in 6 months or something like that? So that's my advice is just do not try to change people. In Atlas Corp, I know that some of you will go to some US organizations, some big companies before going back home again, and you're going to learn something there. But don't try to change people based on that. Like, yeah, I've had 18 months work with Microsoft. This is how they work there. So you go back home and you say, we're gonna do like Microsoft does. You're going to work like someone at Microsoft does. It's not gonna work that way. If you try to do that, then think that you may need 10 years or something like that to do it. But if you just want to get some results in the next 6 months or the next 12 months, then just get the most of your people. Do not try to change them. That's not gonna work that way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robson, for your advice. And now, Atlas course programs aim to train the leaders of tomorrow. Your leadership journey is very impressive because I read it and this was just awesome. Based on your experience, what are qualities required to be a good leader? Are they different for diplomats, private sector executives, or NGO leaders?
Um, I do not think they should be really different. From my experience, um, that's that's the way I did. Is to first thing is to treat people as human. Like you do not you cannot be like very bossy. Like I'm the boss, and then I just give orders and you execute it. And it's the same. I think you work with diplomats. It's the same. They have ideas. You have ideas. You learn from each other. You work with the private sector. It's the same. They are human beings. They're not machines. You work in the NGO. It's the same. I think the very main difference is when you are with the private sector. Making profit is, of course, the main thing is making profit, which you do not see in the diplomacy or in the NGOs. But people are all people. They are all. The way I did was really reducing the gap between, I would say, the supervisor or higher hierarchy and the subordinates. What I used to do, for example, maybe does not apply in other cultures, but in Madagascar, we like to call people, hey director, hey chief, hey. At the DBM, I told my colleague to call me Eric. Do not call me director, or that's not my name. My name is Eric. So call me Eric. And of course, some colleagues found that shocking. Like, what is he doing? He's like the big boss, and how can I call him Eric? And I said, that is my name. Use my name to call me. And that's the way. That's a way to reduce the gap between the boss, and that facilitates actually communication. Like, if your colleagues are afraid to talk to you, to communicate with you, then you will be missing something. If they need to share some problems with you, and if they're afraid to do that, then you will be missing something. So if you can reduce the gap between the subordinate and the superior, and then it will flow much better.
Thank you. You are now as the executive director of the Airways Venture Foundation, which prides itself on the Middle East spirit and in extracurricular strategic sustainable youth development. Could you tell us more about it?
The AYVF has been created actually in Dubai, and we have now an office here in DC. Because the idea is to shift from just the region of the Emirates and things like that to a more global for the youth. It's actually it was I was not there at the time, but it was created in 2007, and it became very important. It played a crucial role when the Arab Spring happened in 2011, where government started to realize that you need to pay attention to the youth. When they saw what happened in Algeria, in Tunisia, these I would say these changes actually were initiated by the youth. The youth was feeling neglected. The youth didn't feel that like there was some future for them in the system and things like that. So this is where the government started to think that let's take care of the youth. Let's look at the youth. Let's help the youth. Let's pay attention to the youth. And that's the role of the AYVF is actually to help the government and also to help the youth think of what they are worth in the society, what they are entitled to in the society, what they can do for the society, what they can do for their country, the importance of their roles, of their presence in the society. And it's not only for the region, it's really for every country. The youth is important. I used to promote investment in businesses, like invest in the tourism, invest in agribusiness. But I think investing in people is even more important. Invest in the youth. Investing in the youth is very important. It's just as important as investing in oil and gas or whatever it is. The youth is playing a very important role in the society today and tomorrow.
All right. So before switching to the Q&A session, I have a very last question for you, Ambassador Robson. Um, every leader has a secret or two that help them become successful. Is there a quote that motivates you or a word of wisdom that you would like to share with the Atlas Course community? If you were to give three pieces of advice for all rising global leaders watching us right now, what would they?
I don't know if it's a secret, but I to me, and that's what I always tell my children. Arrogance is the beginning of the end. Always telling my children, or sorry, it, stay stay humble, stay simple, because the day you become arrogant, because you've had some success here and have some success there, and the day you become arrogant, then that's the beginning of the end. So that's what I always tell my kids. Arrogance is the beginning of the end. So remain simple, remain humble.
Thank you, Ambassador. This is a very good advice. So let's have a look at some of the questions folks are asking us on our social media channels. Um, well, there are a lot. Okay, yeah. There is someone who is asking. I don't know if you could get an answer for it, but Purana from India is asking about investment in India. I don't know if you know, but she said how stable is the investment in India and how safe is India for investors?
Uh, wow, I am not very familiar with India, but I know that I've I've had some comparative analysis between different countries. I know that I have India in there, but that was maybe 2 3 years ago. I'm not sure if it's still the same today, but India is among the countries who attract the most investments in the world, especially in terms of technology. And since it's part of the BRICS, it's a very promising country. How they have uh, resources, they have potentials, they have a very skillful workforce, and they have a large workforce that is very important for investment. How secure or how safe is it to invest in India? Uh, I Yeah, I'm not going to answer the question because I don't know. I really don't remember what it was. I had even a thick document about investing in India, but I do not remember uh, all of it. But the important thing for investing in India is really understanding the culture. And I think it's the same for every country. Understanding the culture of the country we invest in is very crucial and very important.
Okay, thank you. Two questions from Gael from Madagascar is what are the of advice you would give to someone who's looking into starting his or her international career? Do's and don'ts from your successful international career journey that you would share with us.
I would say, of course, the good thing is you are speak English. That is one thing. Speaking at least one main language, at least English or Spanish, or speaking a very, I would say, shall I say, popular or something, a very widely practiced language is important. The other thing is when you go international, it it has always something to do with your opening to new things, opening to even adventurous things, daring to go out of your comfort zone, uh, because you're not going to like it always. You you go out of Madagascar, you go to China, you go to the US, you go to Japan, you're not going to always like it because they have their cultures, they have their know-hows, they have their way of doing things, and there's a chance that you don't like it. But this is what it is. You decided to go there and then accept what they are doing, how they are doing. And that's very important when you go international, when you go abroad. Be ready to face some shocks and to accept some things that you think may not be good, or inside yourself you think it's not, maybe in your culture it's not moral what they do, or you have to be ready to accept that and accept the challenge, and really be open-minded. Really, openness of your mind is very important when you go international. In some cases, you come from a small country, a poor country. People may don't even pay attention to you, and you have to accept that. You have to face that until you do something that attract their attention. Like, oh wow, okay, you are okay. But in some cases, they were just like, all right. The good thing maybe for Madagascar is, especially when that movie came out, like, where are you from? I'm from Madagascar. And, the movie. You see, they're not even thinking about something. Ah, the movie Madagascar, and then you have to react. Yeah, but it's not exactly the movie, but you have to face this thing. You have to accept these things.
I really can relate about this movie things because I had the same experience many times abroad, so I know how it feels. Also, question
Yeah.
from Jonas from Ethiopia: how do you judge the current economic development of Madagascar and Africa as a whole, and what are the key determinants?
Um, the economic development of Africa as a whole is very promising. I will talk about Madagascar later, but for Africa, it's very promising. And there are countries, especially like Ethiopia, who have had their growth for more than 20 years now. They've been growing at a pace that, I mean, it's amazing how Ethiopia has developed for the past 20 years. There are countries like Rwanda, which is now called like the Europe of Africa or something like that. Uh, uh, and and I think in the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, at least at least five of them are from Africa. That is the development of Africa is there, and it's going to shake things up, uh, uh, and it needs to be supported. That's one of the reasons why I co-founded the SDGs challenge last year. The idea at the beginning was when I talked with my partner, I said, in Africa, we have ideas. People have ideas. If you go to Madagascar, you will see those French cars for L or 2CVs that have been there for 70 years, but they're still running. That's because there are some creative or innovative mind in some people's skills to keep them running. But the problem is this innovation and creation are not exposed to the world to get some attention, to have some support, financial support or commercial support or technical support. So we said, let's do something that will bring African innovation into the world and make it take the form of a challenge. And so the idea was of the SDGs challenges to invite everyone in the world. We started with Africa. Actually, we started with 6 countries, 3 in Africa and 3 somewhere else. I think 3 Canada, South Dubai, South Korea, and then 3 African countries, including Madagascar. So that was the idea. But when we had our partners like Atlas Corps or other partners who were really global, then we said, let's open it up to the world. And the reason is we wanted the youth actually to bring solutions to the problems they are living every day based on the SDGs, the UN's SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And having the idea is there were 3 ideas, especially when we were thinking about Africa: the pace, the speed of how things should work, the quality of the solution, and the responsibility. The first is the pace, the speed. You get it faster when you do it from a private sector way of working. Having if you just rely on the government or on the United Nations, it's not going to move as fast as we want it to move because it's going to end in 2030. So first is speed. Second is the solution, quality of the solution. How you can get a very good solution is when you understand the problem. If you don't understand the problem, you don't get a good solution. So who understands the problem the best or the most is those who live in it every day. It's not a consultant that has been sent by the World Bank to your country and say, this is your problem. No, you do not know our problem. You've never lived in Madagascar, so you do not know our problem. We know the problem. So this is the solution to our problem. So that's the second thing. The third thing is responsibility. Making the youth aware that they are also responsible in the country, in the city, in the town, in the village where they are. So that's how I see the economic development of Africa coming is from the youth and supporting this level of development here and there. We have different other questions, but talking about economic development of Madagascar, it's slow today. Every country has suffered from the COVID, recession here, recession there, but Madagascar is, even before the COVID, was kind of slow in terms of economic development. It's not going to keep the pace with some other countries like Ghana or was Benin. Benin just moved to a moderate middle-income country not long ago. Benin moved, so we're not keeping the pace with these countries. It's very slow for Madagascar, and then we'll see how it's going to evolve in the future.
Thank you. Last question from the audience, and before the wrap up, from Marta from Lithuania, you mentioned that it is difficult to assess if the rules of the game will remain after 5 or 10 years. How would you approach this challenge as foresee where the world will be in its case?
That's a good question because no one can predict the future. No one can say what it will be in 10 years. But when I was talking about these rules of the game remaining the same is especially in terms of continuity of a government. You have some laws. You have one government that's preparing, for example, an investment law. The government is there for 5 years, and then you come to invest and you expect that this law that this government has prepared should be continued by the next government for the next 5 years. So that's where I'm talking about continuity of the rules of the game is if the government is there and another one is coming, then the next one should not change everything. Maybe there are things to change, but at least keep the ones that are working for the other term of the other government for the next 5 years. So you're seeing a law that is kind of stable and not taking away the advantages that you've been profiting from another law. And then, when you talk about a contract that has been signed today and you're not sure if the next government will reconsider your contract or things like that. It's true, it's very difficult to know what it is, but it just to make sure that at least some basics are there, some fundamentals are kept running for several years. You can see that in many countries, Like they have this law and then it's applied for 10, 15 years, and so you can but in some countries you're never sure, and that's where we're talking about stability. And when there is assessment of a country, of competitiveness of a country, there are always analysis and studies that say this country is unstable, this one is stable, because based on the past 20 years, they say that they have changed their rules like this for the past 20 years. However, this country has kept its rules stable and evolving and improving for the past 20 years, and then we expect it to be the same for the next 20 years. So this is where you can kind of predict what's going to happen. Maybe it's not 100%, but you know that it's going to be stable at maybe 75, 80%. But some countries are just going like this, and you're not going to put $300 million in a country like that. $300 million, yeah.
Okay, Ambassador Robson, do you still have like 2 minutes for another one question?
Yeah, I see the question here.
Okay, question from Pearl from Uganda. How can young leaders engage governments to create significant change, keeping in mind things like bureaucracy on the country level?
I I think it would be uh, um, it's going to take step by step. I wouldn't take the government as a whole at once. What I mean is you have to identify what we call the champions in the government. Like, see who you think is more open to change in the government. You will always find one or two important people. Maybe it's the secretary general of a ministry or the minister, and then you have to start with that person, and this person will lead 2, 3, 4, 5 other people, and these 5 other will also lead some others, and then this is how you can get change in the government, keeping in mind, of course, the bureaucracy. Identify the champions, identify those who are willing to change, those who will accept to change, and those who are willing to work with you, those who embrace your vision, those who embrace your objective, and then talk to them, and they will bring the change along with you and with all of their teams. The best thing you can have is like the president himself is very open to change, and then he will push the buttons here and there. You change this, you change that, but it's a bit difficult because the president has lots of things to do. But the idea is when you find these champions, that's how you can do it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ambassador. We're really on time. 1 minute left. And first of all, I really want to thank all of you so much for joining us today for another keynote session of the Atlas Course Global Leadership Lab. Make sure, guys, to follow us on Facebook and YouTube for more engaging content like this. And thank you again, Ambassador Robson. This is a real honor to meet you. It's virtually, but as I already said before, you have a very impressive professional journey, and I really hope that you give a real hope for every Malagasy leader that are trying to move on and on their way to the success. And thank you again. My name is Mia, and our guest today was Ambassador Eric Andriamihaja.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. And if anyone has any other question, then just feel free to send them to Mia or to Atlas Corp, and they can forward to me, and then we can discuss further.
Okay, thank you so much, and have a nice day, I think.
Yeah, thank you, and you too, and wishing success to everyone.